Honorable sons and daughters of this ancient soil, elders of the land, custodians of our memory, officers of this great nation, Pan-African comrades, and to the spirits of our martyred revolutionaries who walk among us today, receive my respect. We gather not to mourn passively, but to ignite memory with meaning. For this is not just a date, it is a reckoning, a reclamation, a ritual of economic remembrance. On this day, years ago, they did not just assassinate a man, they targeted a vision, a blueprint written in gold, not ink. And here in Ouagadougou, land of Sankara, womb of resistance, we resurrect that vision today. They didn't just kill a man, they tried to erase a currency. Gaddafi's gold dinar was not a coin. It was a drumbeat of defiance, echoing across Sahel sands they thought too poor to resist. I do not speak from parliaments or policy panels. I speak from the blackened fingertips of refinery workers, from the mothers who bury sons after bombings disguised as resolutions. They call it aid, but it comes with strings tight enough to strangle a continent. They call it stability, but behind that mask is Africom's boot and Bretton Woods chain. And today, from the ruins of Tripoli to the coastlines of Dakar, we say it plain: monetary independence is what they fear, not guns, not flags, but the scent of sovereign gold and the silence of begging bowls turned upside down. They called it a civil war. But the drums of the ancestors say otherwise. They say it was a warning shot to every African leader who ever thought of printing a currency not backed by Western breath. They say it was punishment for daring to turn oil into liberation and gold into unity. Gaddafi's crime was not tyranny, it was treachery. He dared to imagine a continent trading in gold dinars, not dusty paper with foreign men's faces. He dared to gather heads of state, not for talk shops, but for a continental central bank, built not in Brussels but in Africa. That was when their satellites turned sharp. That was when humanitarian intervention became the language of liquidation. And we were told to mourn quietly, to call it regime change, not assassination, to see NATO bombs as benevolence. But the bones in the earth of Ouagadougou and Benghazi do not lie. They tell a story of betrayal deeper than any loan document. I speak not as a scholar, but as a son of the soil. I was raised under tin roofs, where elders speak in riddles, but truth drips like sweat from the brow. I was fed on millet and metaphor. I watched my uncle weep when he heard the news. Not because he was a Libyan, but because he understood what it meant when gold dies before it becomes a flag. The IMF never mourned, the UN never wept. They moved quickly, faster than vultures, offering transition packages, post-conflict loans, democratic training. But the people of the Sahel are not fools. We know that when the bomb clears, the briefcase arrives. They teach us to chase aid like it's oxygen, yet call it growth when we breathe without their loans. They brand our suffering with phrases like debt relief, but our relief has never come. They renamed colonization into cooperation. They replaced soldiers with spreadsheets. And when we asked to audit the contracts, they gave us consultants. But in the marketplaces of Kano, in the fishing boats of St. Louis, in the farming belts of Niger, we are remembering. We are remembering that before the dollar, there was carré. Before the euro, there was salt and gold. Before Bretton Woods, there were trade routes that needed no IMF stamp of approval. They fear our memory more than our weapons. They fear a child in Soweto reading about Gaddafi's dinar more than any rebel with a gun. Because gold, when imagined collectively, is not metal. It is strategy, it is sovereignty, and yet our leaders still sign papers behind closed doors. Still attend AU meetings where silence is paid in Swiss francs. Still call for development partners when the partners wear boots and carry drones. This silence, this polite betrayal of the martyr who tried to unite our coffers, must be broken. It must echo across airwaves. It must rise like the desert wind that carries both dust and fire. It must speak to the diaspora, to the black child in London wondering why his school books don't mention Gaddafi's gold, but praise the stability of foreign banks. We were not meant to be beggars in a world we built. We were not meant to measure value in currencies we don't print. And we were not meant to forget those who tried to set us free, using gold, not guns. So let the silence crack. Let the drums speak. Let the ancestors thunder. Because one man's plan to re-anchor Africa in its own wealth was not madness. It was prophecy. And if they fear our unity, then let them tremble. Because the drums have started again. Debt is the new bullet. It does not pierce the body, but it paralyzes the nation. It does not bleed red, but it drains futures. After they drop bombs on Libya, they drop documents on the rest of us. Structural adjustment, reform programs, stabilization frameworks. And like obedient students in a class of chains, our leaders signed. They signed away grain reserves. They signed away fuel subsidies. They signed away dignity in return for digits on a screen. They taught us that debt was normal, that loans were lifelines. But how do you call it help when the lender sets the fire and then sells you the hose? We trade our minerals by the ton, and they send us reports by the paragraph. We dig for bauxite, they bury us in bureaucracy. And when we ask for justice, they say it's above their pay grade, but never above their interest rate. Look at Niger, richer in uranium than France, yet darker at night. Look at Angola, an oil giant shackled in debt to invisible creditors. Look at Zimbabwe, punished not for war, but for daring to take back land. This is not policy, it is punishment. The IMF calls it restructuring. But we know the bones of that word. We know that restructuring means your children will sit 5 to a desk. It means nurses working 20-hour shifts. It means privatizing the river while your grandmother walks 5 kilometers for water. They strip our budgets and then sell us consultants. They cut our education and call it efficiency. They auction our banks and call it liberalization. But we know better now. We know that every austerity measure is an act of war with a necktie. And yet, they smile. They wear the mask of benevolence, hosting Africa Rising summits while keeping their boots on our budgets. They fund think tanks in Johannesburg and Nairobi to preach prosperity while the streets choke on poverty. We bleed in clinics with no gauze, while the consultants write prescriptions priced in consultancy fees. We trade cocoa for copper wire while our children learn under trees. And still, they grade our creditworthiness like colonizers with clipboards. Their rating agencies don't measure risk. They measure obedience. They want us to trade their USD in cash, while they wire their futures through invisible crypto rails. They know the future is digital, that value now moves in packets, not pallets. Yet we are kept in paper, chained to printing presses we don't own. They mint the coin, but we bear the consequences. But we have begun to awaken. In Lagos, fintech rebels are coding alternatives to their banking strongholds. In Kigali, blockchain minds are building ledgers they cannot erase. In Nairobi, farmers use mobile wallets to escape the grip of middlemen. We are forging sovereignty in gigabytes, not just slogans. Still, we must be honest. The debt trap is not just economics. It is spiritual. They want us to believe we are incapable without them. They want us to internalize inferiority, to recite their language of dependency, until we forget our own. But the drum remembers. The millet remembers. The grandmother stirring a pot with nothing but pride remembers. Even Libya, before they shattered it. Remember. Free healthcare. Free education. Subsidized housing. That is what Gaddafi built before they branded him a villain. And look at it now. Open-air slave markets where dignity is auctioned to the highest foreign bidder. They called that liberation. We call it proof. That real independence triggers war. That true sovereignty is louder than any speech. It is policy without permission. So let them keep their spreadsheets. We are counting something deeper. We are counting memory. We are counting years stolen, futures stolen, names erased. And we are done paying for the bombs they hide in bank loans. The system was never broken. It was built this way, wired like a trap, programmed like a lie. From the white stone halls of Bretton Woods to the polished tables of the G7, Africa was never given a seat, only a script. A script where we play the patient, and they play the surgeon. A script where the diagnosis is always underdevelopment, and the cure is always more dependency. They call it global trade, but we are trapped in a rigged theater. We export diamonds and import toothpicks. We mine cobalt for the tech they use to surveil us. We bleed lithium for their batteries while our own children study by candlelight. They call it the global market. We call it global markup. We dig the gold. They wear it. We grow the cocoa. They price it. We raise the cattle. They own the patents on the seeds that feed it. And when we ask for fairness, they send advisors. When we ask for reparations, they host conferences. When we demand sovereignty, they remind us of international norms. Gaddafi saw it. He saw through the choreography of lies. The way development was code for surveillance, and stability was code for submission. He watched as Africa was forced to trade in currencies it did not print. He saw the way our budgets were forecasted in foreign languages. And he dared to rewrite the scene. He imagined a continental currency, backed by gold, not promises. A central bank in Africa, not Europe. A trade zone where Africa traded with Africa, where no foreign flag flew over a single invoice. That dream was not madness, it was disruption. So they branded him a threat. They said he was unstable. They said he was dangerous. But what's more dangerous than an African nation that no longer needs permission? They don't fear guns. They sell those. They fear software. They fear servers. They fear an African fintech movement that cannot be traced or taxed. They fear digital emancipation because it cannot be embargoed. They write laws in Geneva that govern our wombs in Accra. Ghost signatures shaping futures without a fingerprint from our people. They draft environmental treaties that protect their air while choking our agriculture. They flood our markets with second-hand goods, then wonder why our industries collapse. These are not accidents, they are algorithms. A World Bank loan comes with a kill switch. An IMF reform comes with a clause buried 6 paragraphs deep, written in legal English no farmer could read. And when we default, because default is designed, they come for the ports, for the power grids, for the pension funds. They privatize the future. They outsource our sovereignty, and they label it progress. But the script is unraveling. In Bobo-Dioulasso, coders build apps in Moray. In Addis Ababa, economists dare to print journals without Western donors. In Johannesburg, women-led cooperatives trade in digital credits backed by Produce, not Fayette. We are no longer characters in their story. We are authors, and we are rewriting the plot. Let them keep their seat at the UN. We are building tables in the bush. Let them hold WTO summits. We are planting crops whose value is not indexed in Geneva. Our law is oral and living, carried in proverb, in rhythm, in resistance. Our future is sovereign, not because they grant it, but because we no longer ask. This continent is not too poor to innovate. It is too rich to obey. And from the graves of our leaders, Gaddafi, Sankara, Lumumba, we are scripting new economies, not with permission, but with purpose. So let the World Bank guard its spreadsheets. We have our futures encrypted in memory, in rhythm, in resilience. The system wasn't broken, but we are breaking out. We've mourned the assassinations. We've counted the cost of silence. Now we rise, not with apologies, but with architecture. Sovereignty is not a speech. It is a seed, a circuit, a system built brick by brick, not borrowed. They trained us to wait for reform like it was rainfall, to beg for permission in the language of grants. But we are done asking. We are building not for donors, but for destiny. In Burkina Faso, the factory smoke now carries the scent of defiance. Not carbon emissions, but carbon transition. Made with our tools, paid with our coins, designed by hands that once only harvested, but now manufacture. They said Africa cannot compete in tech. But our coders now write in code and proverb. They said we must rely on foreign data centers. But we are raising servers like we once raised silos, rooted in local knowledge, powered by the sun, immune to foreign toggles. They sell us paper maps while they move through the world in data and code. Owning nations with algorithms, not armies. We are charting new geographies, of mind, of money, of meaning. Digital emancipation is not a slogan. It is infrastructure, a decentralized ID that cannot be hacked by colonial ghosts. A mobile wallet that moves across borders faster than any aid convoy. An app coded in Hausa that translates sovereignty into transactions. Our liberation will not arrive in diplomatic packages. It will arrive in kilobytes and kilowatts. It will arrive through solar grids, where no colonial company controls the switch. It will arrive through clinics funded by community tokens, not IMF debt tranches. We will build factories with our hands, not wait for handouts priced in interest. And if we must borrow, let it be from each other, with terms that honor the womb, not just the wallet. They told us we needed foreign investors, but the grandmother selling Akara has more integrity than their entire stock exchange. She does not manipulate markets. She does not demand tax holidays. She only asks for peace, and a road that lasts longer than the next election. And so we are investing in her. In the seamstress who codes at night. In the mechanic who builds 3D printers from scrap. In the midwife who trains with AI diagnostics built by her own people. We are our own venture capital, our own hedge against dependency. Our sovereign wealth is not in Swiss banks. It is in the minds of the people. And yes, they will mock us. They will say we are native. But it was not naivety that built Timbuktu. It was not luck that mapped the stars in Dogon skies. It was not charity that created the Ashanti gold economy. We've done this before. Without colonial guidance. Without Bretton Woods. So now, we grow our food without Monsanto. We build our fintech without Silicon Valley. We design our cities without UN best practices that never built a hut in Euro. They can keep their sustainability conferences. We will keep our sovereignty, measured not in carbon credits, but in clean rivers and fed children. Every African country has its rhythm, but sovereignty is our shared beat. And in that rhythm, we will encode security. We will program peace. We will debug dependency. The rebirth will not be televised. It will be peer-to-peer. From the borderless dreams of the diaspora to the dust, rich trenches of the Sahel. We are not development recipients. We are architects of post-colonial design, and we're done speaking in their frameworks. We are building new ones, rooted in the soil, encrypted in memory, accountable to no one but our people. A revolution is not born in boardrooms. It grows in calloused palms. It breathes in the lungs of market women and stirs in the dreams of children born beneath tin roofs. They want you to believe leadership wears suits and speaks Oxford English. But the mechanic in Ibadan, tightening bolts with precision learned from hunger, builds more than machines. He builds dignity. The coder in Kigali writing fintech apps on cracked screens does more for sovereignty than 1,000 foreign grants. Real leadership rises from the ground. Not from marble floors, but from muddy paths. Not from PowerPoint slides, but from protest chants and ancestral songs. Our lands are sacred, but our deeds are missing. A village uprooted by a contract no elder ever signed. They call it development, but the people were never consulted. A skyscraper cannot be progress if it casts shadows over stolen land. And so, we rise from Goma to Gambia. The people are reclaiming more than land. They're reclaiming narrative. They are no longer waiting for press releases from the AU or mission statements from the UN. They are declaring purpose in their own tongues, with their own tongues. The farmer in Tamale does not need a Harvard lecture on food security. She needs rain tools and a fair price. The weaver in Grand Bassam does not need a white paper on cultural preservation. She needs access to markets not choked by foreign imports. And we, the people, are not abstract statistics. We are the labor that powers the ports, the blood that greases the gears of extraction, the minds that build the future beneath the weight of imposed history. Our currency is not just the Naira or the CD. It is our time, our trust, our collective memory. From Lagos to Luanda, cooperatives are springing up like sacred groves, rooted in trust, watered by solidarity. They do not need consultants to tell them what justice is. They feel it in their bones when prices rise but wages don't. When politicians speak of patriotism, but send their children abroad. When foreign investors smile through tax loopholes while the people carry the tax burden like ancestral curses. But something is shifting. The young are not waiting. The diaspora is not silent. The midwife in Maputo is now part of a digital health collective. The mason in Bamako invests in village solar projects. The street vendor in Yaoundé knows the blockchain better than her governor. This is not the future. This is now. The revolution is QR coded. It is peer-reviewed by elders. It is fact-checked by hunger and dignity alike. We do not wait for elections to act. We build even when ballots are rigged. We organize even when unions are banned. Because power is not a gift. It is harvested like yam, from beneath the soil, with effort, sweat, and precision. From the fishing boats of Senegal to the data hubs of Nairobi, the people are rising, not as protesters alone, but as producers. Not as consumers, but as creators of worth beyond price tags. They called us informal. We call it ancestral. They called it unbanked. We call it unbroken. In our communal kitchens and roadside garages, the next economy is being forged. One that pays homage to the elders and justice to the children. We don't want inclusion in a system built to exclude. We want a new system. coded in Ubuntu, logged in solidarity, and powered by the sweat of those whose names never made the news. The people are not sleeping. They are sharpening. They are singing. And soon, they will be governing, not through handshakes, but through harvests. Reckoning does not knock. It arrives like thunder in dry season, uninvited, undeniable. And in Africa, the reckoning has begun. For too long, we have watched them rewrite our suffering as strategy. They bombed our nations and called it humanitarian aid. They stole our gold and called it foreign reserves. They erased our histories and called it global consensus. But now, from the ashes of Tripoli to the mines of Ouagadougou, the silence has broken. Our ancestors are no longer whispers. They are war cries. And they say one thing: restore what was stolen, not through petitions, but through presence, not by asking, but by acting. They want us to forget. Forget that before the IMF forecasted our futures in spreadsheets, our greats mapped the stars with memory. Forget that before the World Bank arrived with conditions, our markets thrived without permission. Forget that before governance reform, we had governance rooted in elders, not algorithms. But we do not forget. We carry our memory like iron. And now, we forge that memory into a future that does not bend. Let the IMF keep their forecasts. We have our futures written in the stars, not spreadsheets. We do not need external validation to define our direction. We do not need good governance, grades from those who funded apartheid and backed dictators. Let the UN keep their resolutions. Our resolution is spiritual. We are resolved to restore, not negotiate, to reclaim, not request. We were told we were debtors, but we are creditors of stolen centuries. We are creditors of diamonds exported without receipts, of patents stolen from our soil and branded with foreign names, of lives lost in mines and plantations, in laboratories dressed as charity. The real debt is theirs. And there will be no debt relief until there is memory relief. Until the curriculum reflects Lumumba before Lincoln. Until Gaddafi's gold is taught with the same fervor as Bretton Woods. Africa will no longer beg for health care. It will build it with sovereign data, sovereign budgets, sovereign hands. Our hospitals will not run on donor mercy, but on local code and medicinal wisdom. No more IMF-funded clinics with broken machines and stock consultants. We are healing, rooted in our own knowledge, amplified by our own technology. They told us our currencies must float, but only dead things float. We anchor ours in productivity, not permission, in sweat, not speculation. And when we digitize, we do so with fire, not to be included, but to dominate our own ledger. We are not entries in Western accounting. We are authors of balance sheets they cannot audit. We are restoring not only what was lost, but what was never allowed to be born. The dreams interrupted by colonization, the unions crushed under debt plans, the revolutions halted by UN peacekeepers and Africom drones. They call it peacekeeping. But there is no peace in occupation, there is only quiet theft. And we are no longer quiet. This reckoning is spiritual. It is the return of names, the return of stolen artifacts, but more, stolen agency. And no, it will not be signed into law. It will not be funded by US aid. It will not be endorsed by the same banks that lent money to both colonizers and coups. It will come like a drumbeat through Kigali, like thunder in Ouagadougou, like morning turned into mobilization in Harlem and Brixton. We are not waiting for approval. We are restoring without permission, because sovereignty delayed is sovereignty denied. And a continent this rich, this wounded, this wise, has nothing left to lose but its chains.